Welcome to the debate. Think about the last time you used a vending machine. You press C4, a metal coil turns exactly one rotation, and a bag of chips falls out.
Right, it's a perfectly predictable one-way street.
Exactly. But imagine if you walked up to that same machine and simply said, I'm feeling a little sluggish today and I have a peanut allergy.
Okay.
And instead of waiting for a button press, the machine analyzed your constraints, synthesized a recommendation, and, handed you an apple.
Wow. I mean, that's a massive leap.
It is. And that is the leap we are looking at today with your smartphone. Our source text lays out this massive, provocative premise. It says, artificial intelligence is changing the way we interact with technology, and your smartphone could be next.
Yeah, it is a relatively short sentence, but it carries a staggering amount of weight when you really unpack what it means for our daily lives.
Exactly. So today, we are exploring what this foundational concept of mobile AI actually means for you, the user. Are we looking at a profound qualitative paradigm shift in how you interact with your devices?
It's a move from syntactic interaction, where you have to know the exact buttons to push, to semantic interaction, where the machine actually tries to infer your intent.
I firmly believe we are. I think this represents a definitive transformation in the human-machine relationship, turning passive tools into active collaborators.
Right, and I think that's where we split, because I believe we might be drastically overestimating this shift. My stance is that mobile AI is a speculative, evolutionary step that really remains fundamentally bound by traditional technological limits.
I think that captures our dividing line perfectly.
Yeah, definitely.
So, let me begin by laying out my perspective on this. When we look at how you navigate your digital life, we have to focus on the definitive action presented in the text.
Mm-hmm.
It states unequivocally that artificial intelligence is changing the way we interact. It does not say it is upgrading our processing speeds or, improving our battery life or optimizing our screen resolution.
Right. It specifically says interaction.
Yes, it is changing the interaction.
It is changing the interaction.
Because the smartphone is the most intimate device most people own, bringing interactive AI into this space is described as a total personal revolution rather than a simple software update. It changes the very nature of how users prompt, command, and receive information, moving towards a continuous dialogue with technology.
That word is the linchpin. For anyone listening, this means the era of passive tools, the vending machine era, is effectively over.
Your
smartphone is arguably the most intimate device humanity has ever created. It sleeps on your nightstand. It mediates your relationships. Therefore, bringing an interactive AI into this specific space isn't just a software update, it is a total personal revolution in your user experience. The device is moving from a passive receptacle of your exact commands to an active participant that infers your intent. That is a paradigm shift, not just an evolution.
Look, I understand why that narrative is incredibly appealing, especially in how the tech industry popularizes these advancements. But understanding mobile AI actually requires something entirely different, which is careful expectation management.
Expectation management?
Yes, and we find the mandate for that management right in the text itself, specifically in its conditional phrasing. The text says your smartphone could be next, not will be next, not is next. Could be. And furthermore, the first half of the sentence grounds the entire subject firmly as technology. It says AI is changing how we interact with technology. Mobile AI is not a magical new entity. It is an incremental, unproven continuation of the tools you already use.
Sure, but
If you're listening to this and expecting your phone to wake up tomorrow as an autonomous partner, you're being sold a marketing myth.
Could
What
be
we are
true.
really talking about is a highly sophisticated algorithmic prediction engine being grafted onto a traditional computing platform. It is evolutionary and, as the text hesitation implies, its successful implementation on a mobile device is not even a guaranteed reality yet.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective on the certainty of this change. You're placing an immense amount of weight on the word could, but look at the very first clause. Artificial intelligence is changing.
Right.
That's the present progressive tense. The text presents the AI revolution as a present, undeniable reality. The broader landscape of technology is already undergoing this shift. The could is merely a rhetorical bridge, a way of bringing a massive global shift down to your pocket. It is essentially saying, the tide is already coming in and your feet are getting wet next.
I come at it from a different way. That interpretation glosses over the massive conceptual and physical hurdles of the mobile platform. Yes, the broad change is changing the landscape on massive server farms, in data centers that take up city blocks, running on thousands of specialized chips that require industrial cooling.
True.
But the text explicitly reserves judgment on the mobile aspect. Could be next is a statement of extreme physical conditionality. Successfully shrinking this paradigm shift into a smartphone is an active, unresolved engineering nightmare.
Because of the physical constraints of the phone itself.
Could be
Exactly.
true.
You can't just wave a wand and put a massive neural network onto a device constrained by a lithium-ion battery and passive cooling. Let's talk about how these models actually work. An AI model requires gigabytes of active memory just to hold its parameters, the mathematical weights that allow it to process language.
Right, the RAM.
Yep, and your phone has incredibly limited RAM. Furthermore, when processors do that much math, they generate heat. Your phone doesn't have a cooling fan. If it gets too hot, it engages in what's called thermal throttling, where the processor intentionally slows itself down to prevent the components from literally melting.
Yikes.
Right. If your AI collaborator slows to a crawl and drains 20% of your battery just to answer a simple question, it's a failed product. The text leaves room for doubt because the physics of mobile AI are entirely unresolved.
I hear that, but you are reducing a fundamental shift in human behavior into a hardware bottleneck. Even if the heavy lifting is done via the cloud, meaning the data centers do the math and beam the result back to your phone, the interaction, which is the focal point of the text, still happens right there on your screen.
But
To the user, the distinction between on-device processing and cloud processing is largely invisible and, frankly, irrelevant. What you experience is the momentum of the change. When the text says AI is changing our interaction, it means the very nature of how we prompt, command, and receive information is being overhauled. The smartphone is simply the inevitable canvas for this.
the canvas matters immensely.
This is kind of deep.
A smartphone is not just a neutral window into the cloud. It is a highly specific, highly constrained tool, which brings us to what interaction actually means here. You're suggesting that this changes the fundamental nature of your agency as a user. But the text says we are interacting with technology. We aren't interacting with a new species.